everyone, this is Gina. Today I'm going to show you how to make this little Southwest flavored necklace here with the Shiny New Year treasure box. So these components that I'm using, I have more on my website, so if you'd like to make this necklace, you can. You don't have to have the treasure bag to do this. So you can just get a couple of these components and do this any way you want to do it. But I wanted to use these little pendants again, and I wanted to do a couple of tutorials that were not bead weaving for those who do not bead weave. I'm going to try to double everything up, and then we'll get to some of the other things because we've got a couple other big pendants to do and some of quite a few other beads that we need to get to yet in this box. But this is what we're going to do today. I've done it in a couple colorways, just playing with it. This was my original design. This is the one I do on camera today, and they lay really pretty. They work really nicely. And I wanted to mention iShoes DIY and Misty Moon Designs Louisa. They have both used this component in tutorials, and they both made amazing statement necklaces with it. I have put them in the playlist for the New Year, the Shiny New Year treasure box. If you didn't know, I have a playlist that has all of the tutorials for the Shiny New Year. Check out Misty Moon's and iShoes designs that they did with this. They're amazing. So anyway, let's get started. Okay, so let's discuss what we're going to use in this particular project today. And there's a couple of alternative things that you can use too, and we will discuss that as we get going. From the treasure bag, this is the Shiny New Year treasure bag. You're going to use this component and this pendant. Now, I've already done a tutorial with this pendant, and I know there's only one, but I'm going to show a couple of different ways because not everybody bead weaves, so I'm going to show another way to use that. Or if you've already used that, you can just use some of your drops at the end of this, or you don't have to have drops at all. But I like to have something at the end of the necklace, and we'll discuss that. We're also going to use 13 of these little faceted rainbow plated ovals. You can use the smooth ones too, doesn't matter. We're going to use a clasp. And then we're going to add to the treasure box. You might want to have some of your jump rings out too. But we're going to add to the treasure box some seed beads. So I have an 11-0 in nickel. I have 2 8-0s, one in black and one in turquoise. And I do have some of these colors on my website if you want to check it out. If you don't have any Tohos, then you can come check out. I have everything I'm using right now. And then we're going to use some long head pins. These are 3 inches long. You can get them at Hobby Lobby, you can get them online, whatever. However, if you don't have any of these long head pins, then you can just make an eye pin out of it and connect a dangle at the end, or you can just leave the loop too, but I think that looks a little unfinished. I've seen it done, but you can make out of wire your head pins they'll have to be eye pins, of course, but you can do this. And I'm using 22 gauge artistic wire for that. So you can most definitely do that, and I'll show you how to do that. And you will need 12 head pins and 1 long eye pin. If you do not have an eye pin, you can always just use one of your head pins and turn it into an eye pin, and I'll show you how to do that. Soft flex beading wire. This is fine. I'm going to use my medium, actually. I'm going to use medium soft flex beading wire. Or you can use your chain, and I'm not really sure how I'm going to do that yet, but you could use some of the chain that came in the box instead of beading wire, and that should work just fine too. But I think I want to bead the back of it, and I may use some other beads that were in the box, maybe some of the 6mm round glass or something like that. So basically you're going to need your head pins or some wire and these other components. So on top of that, it's going to be nice to have a nylon nose plier, a pair of chain nose or a pair of chain nose and flat nose pliers, a wire cutter, and some round nose pliers. And we're going to go ahead and get started with this project. Okay, we're going to begin this project by making the dangles that will hang off of the component here. We're going to make all for one side and then we can make the other side. We're going to start with the longest component first because we want to cascade up and decrease in size as we make these. So this particular component has 13 loops on it. Dead center will be the 7th loop. So we'll work into the 7th loop first, and then we'll work all of our other components, all 6 of them on this side, make each one shorter, and then we'll mirror that and do this side. So we're just going to start with the center loop first, and we're not going to connect anything yet. We're just going to make all of our components. So we want to start with the center, and I'm going to turn a head pin into an eye pin. You can, of course, just use a long eye pin that's already prepared if you have one. If you do not, and you just want to get a package of head pins, then instead of an eye pin package and a head pin package, then you can just turn one of your head pins into an eye pin. So the first thing I'm going to do is this is a little bit bent, so I'm just going to hold it with my pliers down towards the head, and I'm just going to straighten it out a little bit with my nylon nose pliers. Now, it's still a little bit warped, but it's straighter than it was. Let's see, maybe not quite straight enough. Let's do that again. You can really mess these up doing this too, so just do it gently. And that's a little better. Then I'm going to take my cutters, and I'm just going to go to the very end, and I'm going to place it right at the very end of the head here, as close to it as I can, and I'm just going to cut that off, just like that. And then I'm going to place my flat nose pliers on this wire. I'm just going to leave a little bit hanging out at the end, about 3 millimeters. And then I'm just going to bend this, just like that. So now I have an L. And I'm going to bend it a little more. You want a pretty good right angle there. Then you want to grab your round nose pliers, and towards the very end of the wire, you're going to grab the very end of the wire, and you're going to use the plier towards the end also, because this will determine the size of your loop, and we want a small loop. So we're going to go towards the front here, and we're just going to grab the very end of the wire, and we're going to start to turn. Just turn as far as you can, and then reposition your plier by just turning your wrist and bringing your hand forward, so away from you, and then just turn some more. And just continue to turn until you have a loop like this. Now I've left it open just a little bit, and it's a little crooked, so I'm going to straighten it out. And we can open and close this with our flat nose pliers. So we're just going to grab this end, and we're going to twist it up. As we twist it up, kind of push it forward towards the straight part of the wire so that it will move in as we do this. Then I'm going to grab my pendant, and I'm going to slide my pendant on. And you can do this, you can just make the head pin and then put a jump ring on with your pendant too if you'd like. Then I'm just going to close this. So I will wiggle it forward until I get it closed nicely. And this is what I have. I can close that actually a little bit better. This component has a pretty big loop on it, so it's not going to slip off, but I still would like it closed a little bit better than that, so I'm just going to work it gently. Now you can weaken this and break it, so don't do it too much, but get it as closed as you can, like this. Now, this is what I have. Get this pendant like this. So because this loop is flat against the bead mat, you want this loop on the top to go this way. So when we make our loop, we have to be mindful of which way this loop is down here and make it the same way. So now I have my eye pin with my dangle on it. And of course, you don't have to use this pendant. You could just make a little looped component with one of the drops and put it on there too, and have drops at the end of all of them. And I'll show you that method. But now we're going to put our beads on, and then we're going to make all of our units for one side of the component, and then we will make the other side. So now that I have my dangle on, I'm going to take one of my oval beads and I'm going to drop it down. And this just makes a really nice ending, a little bit of sparkle, and this is what you should have. And then I'm going to decide exactly what my color scheming will be. And I think I want to start with my turquoise 8/0s. I'm going to pick up 7 of each bead now, so each color. So I'm going to pick up 7 turquoise and drop it down. And then I am going to pick up 7 black. Like this. And then I'm going to go ahead and kind of decrease in size up on the top here. Just makes it have kind of a nice look. You could continue with 8/0s if you'd like, but I'm going to use an 11/0, and I'm using a Toho nickel plate. You just have to make sure your 11/0 will fit over your head pin, and generally Toho 11/0s will most always fit over your head pin. So I'm going to pick up 7 of these also. And this is my first dangle. And I'm just going to leave it laying here. And what I'm going to do is continue, and then we'll connect it to our component after we make our other components. So now I'm going to grab another head pin. Make sure it's straight. If it's not, straighten it out with your nylon nose pliers. And then you're going to do the same thing. Start with an oval. At this time, we're not going to make a loop. Now, if you want to make a loop, or if you're going to use wire and I show you how to make a head pin, then of course use a looped one. If you want dangles on all of them, then you'll use an eye pin or a piece of wire with a loop. So here I'm going to begin with my oval. I'm going to do the exact same thing, but I'm going to decrease a number. I'm going to decrease in number every section of color. So this time I'm going to pick up 6 of each color. So I'm going to pick up my 6 turquoise first, like this, and then I'm going to pick up 6 black, and then I'm going to pick up 6 of my 11/0s in my nickel plate, because you could use another color. I just thought it might be kind of cool to have it go into the component with, you know, the silvers. So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And make sure that your numbers are not off, otherwise your effect of your colors and the cascading look will be off. So now I have my second unit. And then I'm just going to do the same thing with my third. I'm going to pick up an oval, but this time I'm just going to pick up 5 of each bead. So I'll pick up 5 turquoise, 5 black, and 5 of my nickel 11/0s. You can do this in any color scheme, any way you want to do it. Now we're going to continue, and we're going to continue till we get to the last one. So what you're going to do is continue making these and decrease the number by 1 each time. So then my next one, I will pick up 4 turquoise, then I will pick up 4 black, and then I'll pick up 4 11/0s, then I'll do 3, then I'll do 2, then I'll do one, and we'll be back. So just lay them out after you've done each one, and we'll come back and see what they look like. I'll give you a close-up here and continue making your components. Okay, so here you can see I have done all of them, all the way down to just one oval, one turquoise, one black, and one nickel. Now, you don't have to have long head pins for all of these. You could just use it for the first two and then switch down to regular size head pins. Probably would be just fine. So you could make it just a couple of units in wire too if you needed to, but they'd have to have loops on the bottom, and I'll show you that in a minute. I'm going to set these aside. We're going to work with this first long one, and we're going to start putting these onto our component. So with this first one, you have to be mindful of the way that you wrap your loop so that it is vertical up and down like this, so that it hangs the right way on your component. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this and make sure that my loop on the bottom is up and down. So what I mean is that it's up and down like this, not horizontal like this. And I'm going to get you in a little bit closer, and we're going to grab our flat nose pliers, and we're going to grab it right on top of that little 11-0, just a little bit above it so that you have room to bend your wire. So let me show you. Just like this. And then I'm just going to bend it all the way right angle, just like that. And I'm making sure that my loop is up and down on this side. This way, when I turn this, I will have my loop the appropriate way. Of course, it could turn inside the beads a little bit, but it's still going to hang correctly if you do it this way. Now, I'm just going to grab my cutters, and I am going to hold this on my finger like this. This way I can hold my beads down here, and then I can just cut this about 1/4 inch. Right there. Hold on to that piece and cut that. Now I can grab my round nose pliers, and I can just turn this from the very edge, just like we did before. Grab it, and because there's beads on it and I'm holding the beads, it wants to turn. Get to the end here, and then start to turn. Turn as far as I can. Flip your hand or move it forward, or flip your pliers. Reposition it so that you can continue to turn. Turn all the way until you close it, like this. And then we're not worried about the fact that it's a little bit open right now, because we're going to put it onto the component anyway. So this is what you're going to do now. You're going to make all of the loops on top of all of these. So let me grab one more and show you. So I have this one, and these you don't have to worry so much about which way your loop is positioned, because you don't have a loop on the bottom that you have to line up with, and you don't have a pendant hanging from it. And even if you put a dangle on there, you don't really have to worry, because the dangles will hang whichever direction. Now we're going to grab a hold of this one again. Right on top of the beads, we're going to move just a little bit away from the beads, just like this, and then we're going to turn. Like that. Position it over your finger, cut it about 1/4 inch. And that one might be a little bit long. I'll cut it down just a little bit more. And you'll kind of figure out as you're making your loops exactly how much room you need. Then just grab it, turn it, reposition or flip your pliers, and continue to turn. Like this. Now, I'm going to set this one aside, and I'm just going to continue doing that with all of my components. Once we have them all done, we'll come back and connect them to the component. Okay, so as you can see, I have looped all of my little components here. Just try to make your loops on the top about the same size on all of them, as closely as you can, simply because that way they'll hang better in a nice order on your component. And you can always mark on your plier, like take a Sharpie or something, or some people scratch a little mark into their plier so that they know exactly where to position it so that they have the same size loop every time. And then we're going to go ahead and put this side on. Of course, you could go ahead and make all the components for the other side. They're exactly the same. You just don't have to do the middle component. You just start with your 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 because the middle component is finished. Then what we're going to do, I'm going to do one side and then I'll do the other side. But we're going to grab our middle component and count your 6 loops over, and then here's my 7th. So just so that I don't lose it while I'm messing around, I just kind of take one of my head pins that I cut and I just kind of put it in the middle there so I know exactly where my middle is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right there. And that way when I grab my component, I'll be ready. I'm going to now take this middle component, the long one I made, and I'm going to open the loop. So I'm just going to grab this and open it, and as I open it, I kind of move it towards the straight part of the wire, just so that when I close it, it's closed tightly. So I've just twisted it open, and then I'm going to grab my component and I'm going to slide it on here. And sometimes it's a little tricky because you have all these seed beads you have to hold on to, and I lost my loop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There he is. Okay, and I'm just going to put him on there. And then I'll count again. Yep, that's the 7th. Right there. So I just slid him on, and then I'm going to grab actually my little needle nose type pliers here and close that. By just twisting it closed, I shimmy it a little bit, make sure that I get it in close and close it. Because even though these loops are bigger and they're probably not going to come out of a little opening, it can snag clothing and, you know, be pokey and weird stuff. So I want it closed as tight as I can get it. And there is my first component. And now I will just take this one here, and I'll do the same thing. I'm just going to open it, and now I don't have to worry about counting my loops because I know exactly where I'm going. I'm just going to open this just by twisting it open, grab a hold of my component, put it on here. The nice thing about this component is you can kind of balance it on the bead mat and just close your loop just like that. However, you have to make sure you get the right one. Okay, don't laugh at me. I'm going to leave this in just because I am a doofus today. I'm going to open this up. I thought I had them laying in order and I must have messed them up. But you want to get the right one. So you want to go with the 6 and then the 5 and then the 4. Don't start with the 4 and then the 3, the 2, and the 1. So lay them out because, oh my goodness, that's just the state of my brain lately, guys. I'm just going to open this one up and put this on and close it. And there you have it. That's actually the right way. We're going to continue putting these on. Then go ahead and make the ones for the other side and put them on too, and we'll be back. In the meantime, I will come back and show you how to do this with wire. Okay, so I have finished connecting everything, and this is what it looks like. Now, some of these can be a little stiff when you're trying to lay them out and stuff, you could put a little tiny jump ring. See how pretty that turned out? It's really pretty. I'm going to show you how to do a little bit different technique and a little bit different colorway with this, but this is how pretty this is, and then we'll string the back of this necklace. But I wanted to show you how to do this, and like I was saying, you could put little jump rings to attach, tiny little jump rings, so it's not quite so stiff. I mean, it will lay out and it will lay out fine, but every now and then they catch a little bit, and that's because I didn't use jump rings. I just attached them directly to the component. So it just depends on how you want to do it. Now, say you don't have long head pins and you want to make this design. You do have some pretty little dangles, little drop beads. So we have these pretty little drop beads, and then I have one of the smooth ovals, and then I'm just going to use an Toho in a Toho that's just kind of a rainbow color also, and a clear AB, so it'll match. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a component. So first I'm going to start with my dangle. So I have something to put on the end of my wire. I'm just going to drop this little drop bead on here. Make sure that it doesn't slide over the head part of your head pin. And then it's the same thing we've been doing. We're just going to place our pliers right above the bead. Just leave a couple, like 1.5 millimeters, something like that, and then bend it over. And bend it over as much as you can, like this. And then grab your cutters, place it over your finger, and cut that down. Hold it again over your finger, and grab your round nose pliers and turn a loop. So I'm going to turn as far as I can. I'm going to reposition my wrist and continue turning until I have a nice little loop, just like that. So there's my dangle right there. And then I have cut a 4-inch piece of 22 gauge artistic wire. And I'm just going to straighten it out. And you can hold it, because as I hold it, my fingers kind of mess it up. So I like to hold it in my flat nose pliers or my chain nose pliers, like this. And then I just straighten it out the best I can. And then I am going to grab my flat nose pliers. Or actually, you can just use your round nose pliers. You don't even need your flat nose pliers. We're going to go about 1 inch down. Now, this is 4 inches of 22 gauge wire, like I said, and we want to end up with about a 3-inch head pin. So I'm going to go about 1 inch down, and not too far down on my pliers. I'm going to bend this wire over my pliers like this. Then I'm going to turn my wrist and position my plier into that bend. The bottom half of my plier is right inside that bend I created. And then I'm going to bring this little tail piece over the top. As I get it about 3/4 of the way over, I'll turn my wrist just a little bit towards me and bring, with my opposite hand, bring that wire underneath the plier, so that you form a loop like this. And this is what you have. Now, if you don't get quite a centered loop, you can always grab on the other side of it, the side away from the tail, and just bend it over a little bit. And then I'm going to grab my train nose or flat nose, it doesn't matter. And I'm going to grab another pair of pliers. I'm going to position this wire parallel to my plier as much as I can without distorting my loop. And I'm just going to take one wrap around. So one very nice straight wrap around the neck so that you have a nice base to lay your seed beads and your oval on. Just one wrap, just like this. Then I'm going to cut this off as close as I can. Get you in a little closer so you can see. I have that little tiny tail. I'm going to use these little needle nose. If you don't have a little tiny pair of pliers, I really think you should invest in one. These have really helped with this little project. I'm just going to tuck this in, and then I'm going to squish my wires together like this and make myself a nice little wrap. Yep, just like that. Now I can work this just like I worked my head pins, except for every single one of them is going to have a loop, so every single one of them is going to need a drop. So you're going to make 13 drops. Or if you want to put your pendant on, of course, and then put drops on the rest, then you'll make 12 drops. But I'm going to open this one and just twist it out, just like I've been doing. Drop it on here, twist it closed, and then I'm going to drop my oval on here. Of course, you don't have to have the ovals either. If you're making this without having the treasure bag or whatever, just use whatever you want. It doesn't matter. You could drop a little round. You could just start dropping your seed beads on. It's not important. I just think the oval is a pretty addition, and it's in the bag. So I have a bunch of these components. I have a lot of these little smooth oval beads, and I have a lot of the actual components that we're connecting to online, so you can get some at my website if you want to. If you want to do this, so you can do this design, do it with any beads you have. It doesn't matter. Then I think I'm going to start with some clear, I think. So I'm going to pick up my 7 clear. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then I'm going to use this kind of iris 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then I have some 11-0s in sugar plum, and I'm going to pick up 7 of those. You can use any seed beads you want, as long as they fit over your wire, and that's kind of pretty. I can get you closer. It's pale. It's not real bright, but it's pretty. I like it. I think that's pretty. So then all I would do is the same thing we've been doing. Grab my wire up here, bend it over, cut it. Make sure my loop's the same direction, so up and down like this for my center one. I think that's a little bit too long because I'm going to get a huge loop, and I don't want a huge loop. And then I'm just going to turn this like this. Now, if you feel like your wire is a little too soft and that's not going to work, then of course you can always wrap your loop on top too and then connect it with a jump ring. You don't have to do it the way I'm doing it. You can modify it any way you want, but this is what that looks like. And then of course you would just make your others the same way that I did these, by just decreasing a bead on each one in each section. And then this would be my center, and then each one would have a dangle on the bottom too. Or like I said, do this, put your pendant on the same way, do the same colorway or whatever you want as I did, and just have some of these little black dangles or the clear dangles on the other component, on these components too. And it'll hang really pretty. It'll all be just really pretty. So that's the way you can do this if you don't have the head pins. And you can get this component, like I said, if you want. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you how we're going to turn this into a necklace. Okay, so now we're going to make the necklace portion for our focal here. And we're going to use some of these faceted ovals. Now, if you want to use your smooth ovals, you might want to do that, because I want to reserve some of these or I want to use these in another design with my other pendant. So you may want to hold those aside and use the smooth ones. They'll work just as pretty. Or just use something else out of your stash. It doesn't matter. But I just wanted to warn you because you may yell at me later. And then, so I'm using the ovals. I'm adding some of my 6mm round black beads. You can use whatever 6mm round you want, but I have a bunch of those on the website too, so if you want some more of those, you can get some more. However, you should have plenty because there's 2 strands. And then we're going to use, I have some soft flex medium. You can use whatever beading wire you want. I would recommend a medium type of diameter. And then I'm going to use some size 2 beadalon crimp tubes. And I'm going to show you how to use the magic crimper, and then we'll use a regular crimper on the end too. I'm going to use the magic crimper on this portion, and then I'll show you how to use a regular crimper on the end in case you don't know how. And of course you can use those on either side. You can put a crimp cover on if you'd like, modify this however you want. But the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to pick up a crimp bead. I have 11 inches of my wire, and I'm going to put a crimp tube on here. This is a size 2. These magic crimpers only work well with a medium size wire and a size 2 crimp bead. Everything else I've tried them with, they don't work that well. So I don't use them that often. However, I had someone ask me why I don't use it on and show everyone. They are easy to use in a way. In another way, they can be temperamental. So let me see if I can lay this down. So what I have done is I have put my crimp tube on my wire, ran my wire through the loop, and then back through the crimp tube. And now I'm just going to grab my magic crimper. Magic crimper makes a little bead, so it just has one round divot here. So what you do is you just put your crimp bead on there, you put your magic crimper right in on top of that crimp bead, and you squeeze. And then you turn and squeeze. And basically you just keep turning and squeezing until you squish that crimp bead into a little round bead. So the ends up here should be tight against the wire, and as you're crimping and squeezing, it turns your crimp tube into a little bead. It's very easy to do for those who have issues with regular crimp pliers. This is great, but if you use a bigger crimp tube, or if you use my necklace is arguing with me, hang on. That's why little jump rings will help with this design. But anyway, if you use, I'm trying to show you what it looks like. If you use a bigger crimp tube, or if you use a really small wire, or a really small crimp tube, it's not going to work. It's pretty picky about the size that goes inside it. So if you use the size 2 beadalon, works really well with medium soft flex. I found that works about the best. And then I'm just going to cut this wire down a little bit. And I know I didn't show you threading through this very well. I'll do the other side so you can see a little bit better if you didn't see what I was doing. And then we're going to cut this down just a little bit, just enough so it'll go through my bead, my first bead. So I'm going to do that again. And then I'm going to grab a 6mm round, and I'm going to thread this down over this tail. And then I am going to pick up, let's see, how do I want to do this? I want to do an oval first. So I'm going to do a black bead, an oval, and then let me back off. And then I'm going to pick up 2 of my 11O seed beads. Come here. And then I'm going to pick up a turquoise 8O, a black 8O, a turquoise 8O, 2 11Os. Come here. and an oval. Come on, why aren't my beads going on here? Just to make me crazy, I guess. And then we're going to put on a black bead. So those are the segments I'm going to do all the way up until I get enough to make an 18-inch necklace. And how I'm going to measure that is I'm going to grab my beadboard. We're going to set this down on here. These little units on here are so stiff. And put it on the dead center there. And then I will just continue beading until I get about to the 9th. That'll be an 18-inch necklace. That hangs about right with this nice focal. Looks really good. So right in this area, I'll put on my clasping. You're going to get a little length from your clasping. So if you want it to be right at an 18-inch, then you want to go somewhere in this area. Just a little bit above the 8-inch line here, so that it ends up on the 9. But I'm not really particular about that, so I'm just going to bead until I get close to the 9, and then I will put my clasping on. So I will show you exactly what I come up with so that you can do it in the same sequence if you would like. Let me get this here. So I'm going to continue just doing this pattern right here until I get towards the end, and then I'll come back and clasp it. Then we'll do this side again so you can see a little bit clearer how I did that. Okay, so I have finished stringing the amount that I want, and if you're doing the same sequence I'm doing, you'll just have 6 of your, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah, 6 of your black beads. And then I've ended on an oval, so I did my entire sequence, and then my black bead, and then an oval bead. So then I'm going to grab a hold of a crimp bead. Let me get you closer here. And push all that down. I'm going to grab a crimp tube, just like this, and drop it down. Then I'm going to grab my clasping and drop it down. And then I'm going to feed my extra wire through. 11 inches is a little long. We could have gone a little shorter than that, but it gives me plenty to work with, so I'm okay with that. Now, if you can slide through that bead underneath the crimp tube, then great. But it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to. So I'm just going to go back through the crimp tube. Right here. And just hold on to the wire on this side, so the side that doesn't move, and then pull the tail through. And then just make yourself a nice little loop, one that gives you movement. You don't want it huge and you don't want it really tight and small. You want to be able to have nice movement on your clasping. Now, just make sure that as you slide it through, you don't cross the wires to the best of your ability here. So I'm trying to keep mine nice and parallel like this. Let me get it close so you can see. So I've got the wires next to each other, not on top of each other, not crossing each other. I'm just going to hold on to that. I'm going to grab my regular crimping pliers, and on the second divot, the one closest to the handle, I will place my crimp tube inside this divot. So right here, I'm going to turn my crimp tube so I know everything's right, make sure I don't have any slack in my cording or in my wire, and just crimp. And now you can see that I have a fold over here. And in a perfect world, this wire would be over just a little bit further, but it is parallel and it is fine. So I am now going to place my crimp into my crimping plier again in the first divot, the one closest to the tip, this one here, and I'm going to place it sideways. So you can see this little fold in the middle. I'm going to place my crimp pliers to where that fold is right in the middle inside my crimp pliers and squeeze, just like that. And now I have a nice tight crimp. And I can just cut this off real close to it. And my end is now finished. Let's start the other side again, since I was jibber-jabbering and not paying attention to what I was doing when I was showing you the magic crimp pliers. Now this is the magic crimper. I want you to see it. You can do a search online for it. I bought mine, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago. So I can't tell you where to get it because I don't even remember where I got it. But you can get them online. You can do a search. You'll find them. Amazon probably has them. I think a million years ago when I bought it from Beadaholique. So you could try that. And now I'm going to cut myself another length of beading wire here. And I'm going to grab a tube. So let's get a crimp tube. Size 2, beadle on. Put it on your wire. Bring your wire through the component. Slide it through the crimp tube like this. Then pull the longer length of wire down until you get real close to the size you want here. So I look at the other side, since I've already done one side, make sure that my loops are about the same. You don't really have to worry a lot about them crossing in this one or anything else. It's best if they are laying side by side like this. And then you have one divot in these. You can see that one divot. You're just going to place it in the middle of that one divot the best you can. Get it centered and squeeze. Your first squeeze doesn't do a whole lot. I need to change hands. Sorry, I'm right-handed and this is not working. So now I'm going to place it on here again, and I'm going to squeeze, and then I'm going to just turn my plier and squeeze again, and turn my plier and squeeze again, and just keep turning until I can get a really nice little bead forming here. So what it does is the edges squish the crimp tube down around the wire, and the middle just kind of forms a bead. Make sure it's nice and tight, just like that. And see, if you get too crazy, you can crush your beading wire with it too, so be careful. I did get a little bit of damage there. And that's how that works. My crimp is nice and tight. And now I will just string this side exactly the way I strung this side. So I'll start with my 6mm round, drop it down, and my wire is just a little long to go inside that bead. I like to have the wire go in the first bead because then there's no pokey sticking out. So I want the wire to just end inside my first bead, just like that. And then I will pick up an oval, 2 11-0s, a turquoise 8-0, a black 8-0, and a turquoise 8-0, and then 2 11-0s, got 3, 2. And see what I mean about this component. If I had put little tiny jump rings, it wouldn't argue with me as much. I mean, it will lay, and it'll lay fine once you arrange it, but just trying to work with it and stiff, and it gets caught between the loops up here, and it drives me crazy. So if you want to put little tiny jump rings in between, you'll eliminate that issue. However, I'm just dealing with it. So then 2, and then an oval, and then 6mm round, just like that. And I'm going to continue beading this side and then I'll clasp it off just like I did this side, and we'll come back and see what it looks like. Okay, so this is what it looks like. This is my original design here. So you can see that you can put the 11 O's in color up towards the top too. You can do whatever you want. Of course, it doesn't have to be in black, doesn't have to be in turquoise. It can be in any color you want. I just wanted to bring the black out because of the little pendant. I wanted to use the pendant again for those who do not bead weave, since my last design was bead weaving. So this way you now have a design you can do. You can use any kind of dangle you want. You can not use a dangle. You can just leave it like this, or you can do dangles on all of them, because there's certainly enough drop beads in this treasure box to where you can do that. You can do it however you want. If you decide that you don't want it to have a southwest flare like this one has, then use some crystals on it. Use some 4mm round bright crystals on the bottom, and use some colorful seed beads, or just use some little tiny crystals all the way up. You can do it in a million different ways. Lots of versatility here, and you can make a really pretty necklace. I put these on, they lay beautifully. There is some stiffness to it when you're messing with it, but when you wear it, it's perfectly fine. It has good movement, it lays out fine on your chest, and it works really well. So anyway, that's that, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And if you want these components, or I have some more of these black beads, I have a bunch of Tohos too, so if you want to, you can check out ggctreasures.com, especially for the component. You probably have everything else in your stash, but the component you can get, and I have them in packs of 6. So anyway, and they're under the chain and findings page. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, and have fun. Bye-bye.